Hi, I'm Leandro Facchinetti, and let's write some code together, shall we? What we have on the menu today is very special, because we have been developing for a while now this JSFX library that is going to help people develop real-time audio processors for REAPER. And we started the library with the notion that it would be a design system, so it would come with decisions for things like colors and spacing and that sort of thing. So essentially, these are colors, by the way, the things that we are looking at, definitions of colors. So essentially a design system that I was copying and adapting from Tailwind CSS. And that's good for designing user interfaces. I want people to develop good looking and easy to use effects, and I think that visuals are a big part of that. But we also want to have some algorithms and implementations of things that are very common in audio effects, things that are like RMS computation and some conversions between different units of measurement, that sort of thing. So we do have some visual things, we have some digital signal processing things, we have some mathematics. In some cases, we are doing things that we think will be useful. In some cases, we are doing things that is just for learning, for understanding things. For instance, we re-implemented DFTs, though JSFX don't come with a lot in terms of features, but it does come with FFTs, and FFTs are faster than DFTs. So we did this mostly for entertainment and to learn and understand how Fourier transforms work. But I said that today is a special day because we have been developing all these features that we like design system. I think that will be useful. And then Bo, a regular viewer, asked for Bezier curves. We implemented Bezier curves. And we implemented a bunch of things here and there, and we collected many more things that we think will be useful. So we just have a big list of to-do files or to-do items in this file. And some of them are actually not up to date, like this. We already implemented Bezier curves and the color pages are moved. So whatever. The point being, we have a lot of things to do here, but I don't want to keep implementing features on top of features forever without ever using the library, putting the rubber to road, so to speak. So the plan for today is, oh, hey, Bo is here. Great to have you. I was just mentioning you how you asked for Bezier curves. And yeah, all of these features are great, and we do have many more that we want to implement, and we know they will be useful, like multi-channel RMS is going to be useful for the auto mixer and so forth. But the plan for today is to revisit some of my old JSFX and see what we can do. In some cases, like the auto mixer, we're going to leave for later because I know that I will need more components and I will need more stuff to make the new version of the auto mixer that I have in mind. Some things are explanation devices for some of my old videos. 1 year ago, when I was starting on YouTube, I did a lot of videos that were mostly like these streams, except that I pre-recorded because I didn't have the gear to do a live stream. So like the build, not the burning skippers, the broken white noise is just a device for this video. It doesn't really do anything useful. It's a white noise generation with a DC offset, so it's not really useful. So this plugin we just got rid of because that video exists and people can always go to the source code for this using the GitHub link that is a permanent link to this version of the code. So they can always go and check that if they're interested, but really it doesn't really make sense to distribute this for people. So we are going from, I am developing all these effects for videos to explain things like I was doing last year. Now I'm more in the mode of, I want to make things that are actually useful. So yes, I'm still in the business of explaining things and learning things like we did with the Fourier transform, but I also want to make it more professional. Not really, professional is not the word. Make it more usable, I guess. And Bo says, thanks for doing Bezier curves. I'm working literally on them now. Great. Hole smoothing? Yeah, we'll get there now. Yes, it's already in the list of things to do, right? It's not. So I'm adding it. Yeah, I really thought that was in the list of things to do, but yeah, an algorithm for moving average hole. I'll remember this. Yeah. Okay, so some of these things are bigger effects. I think that the auto mixer is probably my most useful effect and probably my most complicated effect. And I do want to make it a lot more complicated with more interesting features. So that one is going to be later. Then we have the ones that we can just get rid of. They served their purpose. And we do have some effects that we want to put into the library instead. Things like beat crushing is such a common thing for you to want to do. We'll probably bring that into the library. And generating waves, we have an oscillator. Let's put that into the library, and maybe even let's have an oscillator that can be band limited in case you want to do a synthesizer sort of thing. So band limited oscillators are useful, and we learned how to do that, how to do band limited oscillators with Justin on the stream with Aria a couple weeks ago or last week, I don't remember. So that's something that can be in the library. And then there are things that I think stand as effects, but we are going to make them better in some ways. For instance, I guess this is a good example. So this is such a simple effect. It's such a humble thing. It's just a DC offset. It's actually very silly. I was doing this mostly to explain what arithmetic operations do in samples. So that's why we see that here. And it does serve a purpose. Sometimes you do want to have a DC offset on a signal. And there is another implementation of DC offset. I think it comes with repack. Maybe it comes with, I think it comes with repack because it's an MPL script. But I do think that my version still holds water. I think that that version can still be useful for two things. For two reasons. First, my version is multi-channel while this one is stereo only. Also, my version doesn't have this silly variable that is not doing anything, is it? Yeah, it's just accumulating a number and it's never doing anything. And then this is also not used anywhere. But that doesn't hurt anyone. The second reason why I think, besides multi-channel, why I think my version holds water is that we could do some visualization of the wave and where the DC is, and then you can see the DC offset. So two reasons why I think that this stands as an effect. And it's going to be a simple effect, but not as simple as this. It is going to have a GUI and it's going to show you the waveform. And I think that can be useful. So I guess those are the three categories. Some things we can just get rid of. Some things we can slightly improve. Some things we will want to completely redo, like the auto mixer. So how about going down the memory lane, it's like a reminder of what we did this past year. We have done a lot in terms of JSFX. Has been a lot of fun. So let's go this one by one and decide what to do with them. I'm going to have a buffer here with the names of all of these guys. Oh, doesn't work that way, does it? Let's go to the terminal, effects, ls, one at a time, pb, copy to go to the clipboard. And then we have a buffer here with all the files in that directory. I want this to be in text mode. And then this is our library. We don't have to do anything about it. The auto mixer is going to be revisited completely. A beat crusher goes into the library. Or maybe I'll have a section for this. Things that will go into the library. And maybe it could be an effect on its own. Let's see what we have in terms of beat crushers in JSFX. Yeah, there is bit reduction. Bit meter. I think there is a reason for the bit crusher still. First, because my bit crusher can do fractions of a value. Second, because it doesn't have all these options that can be confusing. And third, because I could do some visuals. But I think I will group maybe the bit crusher with a downsampler, a decimator. Well, let's just say that for now I'll have a bit crusher, but I will have some sort of visualization with the bit crusher. So I will want to make it better looking. So it will be in the library as an algorithm, and there will be an effect as well. The broken white noise we can just get rid of. The burn-in speakers is kind of a cute effect. If you didn't watch that video, or I guess those videos, there are two of them. It's kind of a cute effect. It is, I don't think there's anything like this. Yeah, I don't think there's anything like this. It's when you get a new pair of monitors and you want to break them in, you want to burn them in, you leave them playing some sound for like one evening or one night, leave it overnight so that the speaker has time to, well, burn in and get the optimal response. It's like breaking in a new pair of shoes. And I wrote this effect that would do, it generates white noise, but it's kind of cool that the left channel is exactly 180 degrees opposite of the one channel is exactly 180 degrees off of the other in terms of phase. So if you put one speaker in front of the other, while one is going out, the other is going in, and vice versa. And that means that it potentially generates less noise. So you may be able to crank it up a little bit more and burn in your speakers even better. So that could be an effect. It's just white noise. So I suppose that we will have white noise below. So white noise goes into the library, but I think we'll have some kind of like noises effect that will have different flavors from white to pink and brown. It could be fun to implement pink noise and brown noise. But yeah, the library will have the white noise. I'm going to include that in the library, but I will do I'm going to start maybe taking notes of what I want to do in terms of visualization. Well, maybe not quite, but the burn-in speakers can be an effect. It doesn't have to be in the library. It's such a simple thing. It's just inverting the phase of a channel and generating white noise. So white noise will be in the library, but the burn-in speakers will not be in the library. But I do want to build it, and we could have something like a timer, and I guess that's just it. A timer and some loudness or gain control. And a timer could be fun to implement because I don't think we have, I'm pretty sure, I know for a fact, we have not used the timing functions from JSFX anywhere in any JSFX so far. But there are timing functions. So you can say, what time is it? And you're going to get a good precision timer. So you can load the effect into a track, you can set the gain, and then you can set a timer for 10 hours, go out, and 10 hours later it's going to stop. I don't know how useful that is, but it's kind of a cute effect. Then let's see. Oh, Bo says there is that other smoothing formula that I am way overdue to send you. That's fine. I have way more on my plate than I can handle, so take your time, Bo. Right, so copy channel to all channels, and copy left to right and copy right to left. These are pretty self-explanatory, and they are what you would expect. They are very simple. So maybe let's see if it even makes sense to still have this as an actual effect. I think these were inspired by Audition. I think they have I don't know if they call it effects, but they have something like this. And to copy channel to all channels, I can say which channel I want to copy. But it goes from 0 to 64, and that doesn't make sense because channels go from 0 to 63 or from 1 to 64. So what do I do? Yeah, see, this number should be 63. These effects, I don't think make a lot of sense because these are things that you can easily do with pins in other effects. And in Reaper, you can always just right-click and render things to stereo. If you want to make a mono file stereo, that's very easy to do. You can render to stereo. Yeah, I don't see much use for this. If you are doing something weird with your routing in terms of pins, then you don't need this effect because you can just pin differently. You can do something like the inputs take their inputs and then the outputs are like this. So yeah, in terms of routing effects, those effects don't really make a lot of sense. And then in terms of actual usefulness, if you have a mono signal, you can always render it to stereo. The only issue I can imagine that this could try to solve is maybe if you have a stereo file that only has information on one channel and you would like to rectify that, you would like to fix that in some way, but I don't think so. I think that they are dead. So copy channel, copy left to right, copy right to left. Bye. Then DC offset, it doesn't belong in the library because it's just an addition. So I do want to make an effect out of it that will show you the waveform. So when the thing that I want to do is just visualization, I'm not even going to bother with writing it down. Then the demonstration effect, of course, is the demonstration of our library that stays. Then we have an enveloper. What does that do? I think it multiplies. Yeah, that's what it does. So if you have a sidechain, you can have an LFO in the sidechain, and this is going to multiply. The reason why I created this was for explaining what different arithmetic operations do to the signal. So similar to the DAC offset one, I had that. And to explain multiplication, right? DC offset explains addition and this explains multiplication. Not really sure that this is actually useful. You could make use of this if you're trying to, if you have an oscillator, an oscillator running at a very low rate, which I think my oscillator is capable of doing, or it was in the to-do list before I left it. So you were able to create a low frequency oscillation, and you could put that on a side channel, and then you would oscillate with this, and then you would have a tremolo kind of effect. But I think having a tremolo kind of effect probably is more useful, right? And what is there in terms of tremolo? There is a tremolo effect, and it's decent. The big flaw is that it doesn't sync to the timeline. There is no way of seeing a quarter note. And it's one that comes with Reaper probably. Yeah, it is a very simple one. It's stereo only. And yeah, it's kind of cool, but I think we can do a better tremolo. So maybe instead of this enveloper that is so generic, kind of weird, isn't really useful. I don't think anyone ever used this, but we could have a tremolo. Could be fun. It's such a simple effect to write, and we could visualize it as well. We could have something more like the Melda tremolo. Oh, there is an Air Windows tremolo. Didn't know that one. Yeah, the melody tremolo is great in many ways because you can customize the shape of the wave. And it can sync. What it does not do is show the wave changing over time, which is something that I kind of like. But other than that, it's a pretty basic one. But we could recreate it, could be fun. And then, yeah, I guess this is also probably just the standard thing, very simple implementation probably. Similar to what we would create anyway. Right, so we can put tremolo in the list of effects that we would like to create, but we can get rid of this enveloper. Then, oh, this is actually something that I really want to get to. It's such a simple effect. It's the first effect I created a video about, I think. And I think I got the formula wrong in the first place, or there is some reason why I had to update this. But we do need this plugin. We definitely need it. It's such a simple plugin, it's a game plugin. But I couldn't find any game plugin that actually works the way that I wanted, with the controls in a range that made sense. It just doesn't work all that well. And we do want to get some of these things into the library if they're not there already. I think that most of them are. But I do want to rework this game plugin to make it great. Then we have this invert left and right. And it does what you would expect. So I guess this is in the same family as those copy effects. Not really useful. You can do this in Reaper in so many ways. And then there is this one to invert the phase. And this is multi-channel. I guess probably this was the effect that I used to explain how to do multi-channel effects, but I forget. And it explains what happens when you invert a signal. So that's kind of cool, but in terms of being useful, phase meter, phase rotator, yeah, there's nothing quite like this, but there are plenty of ways you can invert the phase of something. Like here, you can invert the phase of something. But if you are in the middle of a complicated effects chain and you want to invert the phase, there is nothing quite like that. So yeah, I'm gonna keep my phase inverter. Then in terms of clipping, I was explaining how to do clipping and how to use min and max. It is multi-channel. And could it be in the library? I don't think so. It's min and max. There isn't really a lot to do here in terms of library. Same for the invert phase. But the hard limiter, it's actually kind of a distortion effect. And or saturation. What do I want to do with this guy? Well, if we want to keep it, we need a new user interface for it. We need to show the waveform being clipped. I believe there are already some limiters. Let's see, or even let's look for a clip. There is a clipper, event horizon is a clipper, and then a bunch of Air Windows stuff. Yeah, this is not multi-channel. This is trying to be a soft clipper, but it's not, is it? It's just using min and max. Oh, no, okay. It is a soft clipper because it's using the exponential to soften that. Modeled after a soft clipping stage in a popular tube mastering plugin, this is really just a low threshold brick wall limiter. That is all neat. Yeah, I don't think there's anything quite like this thing, so we are going to keep it, and we are going to have some graphical user interface for this. Maybe And by the way, I mentioned there are other clippers here, like the event horizon, but that's a lot of controls, isn't it? Oh, there is a release, ceiling, threshold. And in the other event horizon, there is even more options, isn't there? No, they're very similar. How are they different even? I don't know. Well, this one allows you to soft clip, and this is a release, which is a soft clipping kind of thing. So go figure. Yeah, this can be useful in some contexts. So yeah, we'll do a hard limiting thing. Then mid-side encoding and decoding. Yes, let's put this in the library. Because it's such a simple formula, but I guess that's what we are doing here, right? We are encapsulating formulas in the library, and it's such a simple formula, but there are all these things you have to get right, like you have to divide by 2 to get the amplitude right. So yeah, mid-side encoding and decoding. And there are so many mid-side things, so I'm not sure if we'd want to keep it as an effect as well. Let's see. There is mid-side by air windows, okay. Seems like Chris was doing the kind of thing that I am doing now, like very basic, like tremolo and mid-side, but probably many years ago. And then there is mid-side to stereo, mid-side encoder decoder. There are all these multi-channel configurations that people can use. So I think that this territory has been covered by JSFX, and I don't need to maintain one. No, this is very simple. Just encoder and decoder, center level, output swap, and center position. So you have some panning controls. We could have something that is a mid-side encoder that would allow you to set the levels of the mid and the side. So if you are doing mid-side to like hit an EQ, you could do some levels there. And here we could do something like that, and panning. But I don't think I'm feeling it. Yeah, I think that the mid-side encoder and decoder are going to go away. Then this mix down to mono is again kind of the copying kind of things. You can do this with the pins, you can do this with routing, you can do this in many ways in Reaper. You don't need my help. This effect is actually useful. I used this before. It's one more place in the chain. It's like the gain effect. It's trivial, of course, but it's something that sometimes is useful. It's one more place in the chain where you can mute something. So I used this before, and I think I used my version because there is no other version of muting, right? How come no one developed this before? It's such a useful thing. And muting may be something that I don't want to have a graphical user interface for. I mean, if you're muting the signal, you pretty much know what you're getting. But yeah, the reason why I needed to have mute before, and it was useful for me, was that I didn't want the track to stop processing video, so I couldn't mute the track, but I wanted the track to stop processing audio. And I could right-click on the media item and tell it to ignore the audio, but it's much easier to just drop a mute effect on the effects chain. So it was useful before. I'm gonna keep it. Let's see what Bo has to say. On another note, I remember you were struggling with finding a good value for tau for the RMS length calculation. Yeah, I was using the one that everyone uses and it was not giving me good results. I did find one the other day that I haven't tried out. It might work. 1 divided by 2 divided by 1 plus x. Okay. Let me make sense of this actually, because I don't think I understand it. So this formula, if I understand correctly, 2 divided by 1 is 2. So that cannot be that. You probably mean this parenthesis, right? But then this is the same as that. Just using kind of a mathematical relations like this. And then yeah, I don't know why this formula would work, but we can try it out. But is this what you mean? Did I do the mathematics right here? Do I understand it correctly? Or do I misunderstand you? Right, okay, so coming up next, we have this Null Tester. In terms of the implementation, it is what you would expect. I'm just subtracting channels. So I was just explaining what arithmetic does to some signals and trying to come up with useful things for everything. So plus is a DC offset. Multiplication is gain, and inverting or multiplying by -1, in phase inversion. And this subtraction is a null test. And I can see why this could be useful in practice. I don't think it belongs in the library because it's just subtraction, such a simple thing. But I think it does make sense to have this as an effect. Typically, when people are setting up a null test, they have to do some routing tricks to get the same signal to multiple tracks, and then they have to, or not tricks, they have to use sends and receives. But then they have to invert the phase, and then they have to put some effects in the track. So it usually goes like this. You have a source of something that you want to do processing with, like maybe white noise or a tone. Then you send it to A and you send it to B. So that's your A effects chain and your B effects chain. And in here you would do things like you would put some effects, maybe a compressor here, a compressor there, or an EQ here, an EQ there that you want to compare. And then you can not send the audio to the master, and you can send only to these two. Then you invert the phase of one, and then you can group everything into a group so that now both of these are sending the signal to the parent. And then in here, you would put some spectrum analyzer, some oscilloscope, or whatever you need to see what the wave is doing. It's kind of a weird setup to do, right? You have to remember to mute this, you have to do all this routing, and you have to remember to invert the phase, and probably someone who's doing a null test at that point, they know how to do this. But what this effect does is it allows you to do all of that in one chain, and you have to play with multi-channel tracks, and you have to play with pins. It's not exactly trivial. But again, if you're doing these kinds of null tests, you probably know how to set this up. So I don't know. Maybe we could have an effect that would... So the way this works, by the way, is that if you have like 4 channels on a track, the last 2 channels are one of the signals you want to test, like B. So channels 1 and 2 are A, channels B at 3 and 4 are B, and then this effect is going to subtract them. But we could put a spectrum analyzer right in there, an oscilloscope right in there, and then you would just have one effect, and then you could do all of this in one track, a multi-channel one, but at least one track and you would just have to put the pins in the right way. Not so sure this is super useful, but once we have a spectral analyzer and we have an oscilloscope kind of components, this is sort of straightforward to do. So I don't think it belongs in the library because it's just subtraction. But we could have an effect for this for real. It can be useful. Bo says, you're better at math than me, but that looks like it would give values over 1, which is it's not supposed to do. Yeah, so where did you get the formula from or something? Maybe you can give me more information to go by, because yeah, just by looking at this, yeah, it got us to x plus 1 divided by 2 or something, which is not terrible, but I don't know why that would work or how it would work. But I'm interested in knowing, so let me know. Right, next we have the oscillator. This is something that I definitely want to have in the library, and I want to have it here as well as an effect. I want to have an oscillator. There are plenty of oscillators, probably some of them in JSFX. But I mean, let's look at the ones that exist. Yeah, it's a good thing that I remembered to remove the audio output, but let me just mute and make sure that this is all the way down. So yeah, re-rack is a big thing. There's a lot, much more than if you just want to have a sine wave to play with. You're probably not gonna pull this guy off of the shelf. But it's super cool that this exists. We could lift some of this code for interesting things like, this is cool. The noise. You can control the stereo width of the noise. Amazing. Yeah, I can see where this is going. It's not going to, if you're just testing something, you're not going to pull this guy off. But you can see this waveform kind of has these wiggles that makes me think that this is band limited. So it's probably doing the right thing even. Then there is this alpha, beta, gamma, A, B, K. Yeah, what is going on? Cool stuff, but no. I'm interested in just the kind of tone generator. Tone gauge? What does that do? Huh. Okay. Yeah, but I'm more interested in this kind of tone generator, and I think that it has a lot of potential. Mine already has some graphical user interface that is showing you the waveform. There are different waveforms. We can make this a lot better and more graphical, but I think it has a place in the world. And yeah, right. So the oscilloscope, we kind of already have it in the library, but I do want to revisit it in terms of effects. Then RMS, I think that one was just me in my video series explaining different ways of computing RMS. Yeah, it's just different ways of computing RMS with different window sizes. Cool stuff in that. But I think that it actually belongs in the library because I want to have that thing that we were talking about right now in the chat with Bo. Different ways of computing RMS, one of which is the exponentially weighted moving average, and you have to pick a right coefficient for that. So all those things, exponentially weighted moving average, picking coefficients for RMS, all those things could be in the library. But if you, in terms of being an effect, does that make sense? I don't think so. There is already this, which is good. There is already so I know that this one is kind of cool looking, analog looking. And then there is this. So I don't think you need mine. I don't think there is much that I can do. Oh no, there is something that I can do. I can do what I keep bringing up, which is not only showing you the current RMS, the current LUFS or whatever. I want you to show the history of that. I can plot the history of RMS. And that's not something that I usually find in other effects. So RMS is an effect. I'm going to put in parentheses here like history, because I have to remember that this is what I mean when I want this to be an effect. And maybe even LUFS could be in there. And other measurements. And I know that there are things like the U-lean meter and that sort of. I want to go into more of that space, showing you over time, showing you stuff over time. And we probably need the peak, like the basic ones. Maybe true peak could be fun, because then we have to do some oversampling. Bo says, that's from a financial exponential moving average smoothing formula. Don't remember which now, which gets me thinking that it's probably a formula for a number of samples. So it might need a milliseconds to samples equation. Sure, yeah, that's based on the sample rate. So the milliseconds to samples, I think, is something that we probably already have in the library. But if we don't, then we need to put it in the to-do list. Yeah, we have milliseconds to samples in there. Great. Then we have these rectifiers, full wave and half wave. And they are just using the absolute value and using max. So I don't think that they belong in the library, but we have a theme going on here. We have many kinds of distortion. So let me put all of them in one place. These are like wave shaper kind of things. I'm going to put this under distortion wave shapers. And there are distortion and wave shapers in REAPER. Some of them are very, very cool, actually. A squash something, squash man. No, that's not the one I'm thinking about. But it's, I think it's Psyche. Oh yeah, some anti-aliasing could be important there. What is the name of that effect? I forget, but I do know that there is a very nice wave shaper. The problem is that it's too nice. It's very complicated. It's super complete with lots of options and lots of knobs, as usually you would find in Psyche's effects. They're very advanced. Yeah, and it does not go by the name of wave shaping. And then there are these other ones. Okay. Yeah, I think there is a space for us, because all of these, they are either lacking in terms of user interface or they are too complicated. But oversampling here can be nice. Oh, 32 times oversampling. Cool. And how do you even get this to change? Oh, it's a graphical wave shaper. You draw the shape. And you can even do asymmetric stuff. But when it is 0, it needs to output 0, doesn't it? Doesn't like if you don't output 0 on 0, because then it starts to self-oscillate and generate sound where there isn't. Cool. So this is nice, actually. But I think we can do better. Various formulas, type 1, type 2, type 3, yeah. Limiter all and oversampling. Cool. Who did this? Okay. Yeah, I think there is a space for us to do some good distortion, relatively easy to use, great visualization. I think there is a space for that. And then stereo mixer, if I remember correctly, it's again just one of those manipulate channels kind of thing. Yeah, there isn't really a point of doing this. It's such a simple thing for you to do just using routing in Reaper. Though from all of them, this is probably the most useful. And I do think that I do have like a mid-side thing that I want to do, right? Did I decide something about the mid-side? Decided not to do it, so I'm not doing the stereo mixer as well. Okay, let's see what we are left with. Getting rid of stuff feels great, doesn't it? Oh, a Bezier wave shaper? There's a couple commercial ones, but I haven't seen a JSFX one. Yeah, sure. It's just another way of drawing that curve. We have a free-form drawing, like in the one we just saw. So, Bezier wave shaping. And wave shaping is such a cheap trick, right? But getting the anti-aliasing right and getting... If you want to do just wave shaping, then it's fine. But if you want to get it a more interesting sound, you probably want to have some kind of decay to the wave shaping. So if you're truncating a waveform, you have some sort of decay to when you're getting back to the non-truncated waveform. And that is more realistic. And there are all these papers about emulating tubes and whatnot. It could be fun to dive into that. Right, so let's see if all the ones that we want to keep are in there. Invert phase, I don't think I want to keep, am I right? Oh, I said that I wanted, okay. And then mute and null tester. All right, so this is just gonna go into the library as a big old to-do. And maybe let's try to pick a low-hanging fruit to do a quick pass on. The mute effect is a low-hanging fruit. So we are going to do that. And then we are going to wrap it up. And yeah, all right. So let's work on the mute effect. Well, it's missing a description. And now that I'm revisiting my effects, I can take the opportunity to actually rename them. Because it's not traditional to put your name before, the same way that we do in Lua scripts. It's not traditional to do that. So what do people often do? They prefix the name of the effect with their name, or they suffix the name, or they don't do anything, like the sonic anomaly people. Yeah. I think since there is no established convention, I'm going to follow the convention of Reaper scripts. And is there anything else that I want to do here? Yeah, actually there is. Following the convention that we are establishing, I'm going to namespace this variable. But other than that, it is doing what it's supposed to. Maybe I could put some documentation here. Like, useful. For example, when you want to mute the audio but not the video on a track. And it's common for people to actually open the JSFX code as a way of looking into the documentation. So just leave the documentation there, and that will be that. And do I want to sign this? No, I think that people will know because they have added my repack. And my name is right there. And they had to manually add my repack repository because it doesn't come with repack. So it's not one of the default ones. So there you go. I think that this does it. I think that the mute effect is finished. It doesn't have a graphical user interface. And then, yeah, I'm going to wrap this up. This is it for now. Let me catch up with everything else that you said. Also, you've mentioned phase flip, gain, mono, channel swap, mute, etc. Combine all of those things in a one toolbox. That could be a nice thing, actually. A utility kind of effect. I don't know. I think it's better to have them as separate effects. Yeah, I mean, because think about the way you use this. If you are in a track somewhere and then you have to look for you can just go for my mute effect and then bam, you drop it on a track. The name is not here because I am not editing in the folder that Reaper looks at, but you just say mute and then bam, it's there. While if we had some kind of utility kind of plugin, then we would have to drop it on a track, and then you would have to find, oh, I am interested in this one, then enable, then configure, then whatnot. So yeah, I mean, it makes sense to do that when you're doing a VST because each VST needs to be installed, then cached by Reaper, blah, blah, blah. So I think it makes sense to have a utility kind of effect, same way this has. This is an utility kind of effect. But in JSFX, it's so cheap to just create another one. It's such a small file. It's not something that you have to compile separately and whatnot. So I don't think that the utility box kind of thing makes a lot of sense. I have one with gain plus channel swap, meaning to extend it. Yeah, I don't know. I think that because JSFX are just small text files, they're not artifacts that you compile using the VST SDK and whatnot. Even that is kind of light. It's just 100 kilobytes. But again, I think because JSFX are such a light thing, it makes sense to separate them. Yeah, so I guess that's that. So thank you all for being here. And tomorrow, I'm going to continue working in JSFX. I'm going to leave my Arduino stuff for Monday in the hopes that I will be able to pick up a breadboard. Turns out that I will have to go across town, a 2-hour bike ride round trip. So yeah, it will be complicated, but I will try to get the parts and I will continue my Arduino project on Monday. No, on Monday, I'm going to be on Aria's channel, so on Tuesday. Tomorrow, I'll continue working in JSFX. And I think that the thing I'm going to do, let's make the promise right now. I want to do some more of these old effects. And this sounds silly. It sounds complicated to get into right now. I think I'm gonna go do the gain. No, Ash, no, I'm not gonna do the gain. I'm gonna do the noises. Because we have not really talked about pink noise and brown noise, and I want to show you all how to create pink noise and white noise. There is a paper on how to create pink noise. It's a lot of fun. And the brown noise algorithm is also kind of cute. So yeah, tomorrow we'll talk about noises and we'll make a noise box. And in this case, I do think it makes sense to have all three in one box. Yeah, I think I'll have just one effect that is a noise box, and it will have all three flavors of noise. So yeah, tomorrow, check in for some colorful noises. See you tomorrow. Thanks for being here. Bye. Oh, my keyboard shortcut didn't work. Let's try again.